Good morning all. I wanted to make sure everybody understood how to access and how to use an economic calendar. So this one here is just forexfactory.com. It's the one that most of us use, I believe. And once you're on the site, as long as you click on the calendar option, which you can see up the top, it's going to display all the news events. And as you can see, there are tons of them. Okay, most of them really don't matter. But first of all, the first thing you should do is just above where it says Wednesday, December 14th on the left. It tells you the time, 7:02 a.m. Click on that time and set it to your local time zone. Otherwise, if you're anything like me, constant time zone calculations are going to cause issues. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to miss events that are important. So, silly not to set that to your local time. Okay, so having done that, that will save a lot of issues. As I said before, there are tons of news events. As far as I'm concerned, anything other than a red folder event, you don't need to know about. So where it says 7:03 a.m, if you go right across to the other side and directly above where it says actual, click on that symbol and you can filter out those grey events, the yellow events, the orange events. Get rid of them. That's how I'm going to leave mine, but you can filter out certain different currencies as well. If there's some there that you really don't trade, but I'm happy just to leave them all so I know. And click apply filter. Now we only get shown the red folder events, so that's fine. Now, talking about, well, there's Tuesday and we've got the US dollar CPI. If you want to go and have a, so that was last night at 11:30 p.m. my time. If you want to go back and have a look at the charts and see what occurred then, you will see why you need to avoid CPI. There is always a gap in the market, so as soon as that news event happens, the market most often is significantly different to where the market was the 1 minute candle before it. So there'll be a big gap in the market. Okay, that big gap may go way past where your stop loss is and you'll take a much larger loss. You might have your stop loss set to take a 1% loss, but because of that gapping, you could take a much larger loss. You might take a 5, 6, 10% loss. That gapping can also occur if the market's closed for any length of time. That's why we like to avoid having, like on some brokers, DAX is closed for 5 hours or even more sometimes, every day. So it's best to avoid holding a trade during that closed period because the market could open significantly different to where it closed. Also, the same reason I don't like to carry trades over the weekend, because there is, you've got 48 hours when the market's closed, so another good chance of there being a gap in the market. Okay, volatile news events like CPI and NFP, they also have another danger, and that's called slippage. Because the market's moving so fast, you may not, the market might go past your stop loss and activate your stop loss, but before that broker can sell your order or close your order, the market can be a lot higher. So before that trade's all closed out, the value could be significantly different. So even though you're, let's say you're trading NAS or something and the current value is say 11,000 and you hit your stop loss, before your position gets completely closed out, the market could move up to 12,000 and incur a much larger loss as well for that reason, because nobody's wanting to purchase at 11,000 now. because the market's up to 12,000. Hope that makes sense. But certain brokers have less liquidity than other brokers. So this slippage is more significant on the smaller brokers that don't have as much liquidity. So those two reasons, slippage and gapping, are the biggest dangers to red folder events. So if you've got a trade open and then a news event happens, that's where that danger is. Once that news event starts, then it's only that first instant, that first 1 minute candle after the news events, that gapping and slippage is a really big issue. The market can still be very volatile for a while after, for up to an hour after the news event. There can still be a lot of volatility, but you don't really get that slippage and that gapping danger. You can still lose a lot of money by trading the wrong way, but stop losses after that first couple of minutes of a news event, a stop loss will generally protect you. That instant the news event occurs, a stop loss may not protect you. And that is where the danger is. All right, what else? In case you didn't know, if you're trading anything with the US dollar in it, so Euro USD, Pound USD, USD Yen, Nasdaq, US 30, anything that's really either a US based company or a US based currency, you want to be looking at the US dollar news events here. If you're just trading the Great British Pound, you want to be taking note of the red folder events associated with GBP. Okay, so whatever country this news event is the currency it's going to affect. Mind you, the US dollar is still king, so anything that affects the US dollar will also have a ripple effect onto other currencies. Not as pronounced as with the US dollar, but you will still see movement and volatility on other currencies. Whereas, if there's an Australian dollar event, it's really not going to affect the US dollar. And that's particularly so with, CPI, FOMC, NFP. They are all USD events, US events, but they will affect, and they're the most volatile news events, they will have a big effect on basically all currencies anyway. So just be aware. Generally, whatever news event currency it is, that's what it affects, but US dollar ones, and particularly the most volatile ones, will have an effect on everything. All right, guys, if you're not taking note of the economic calendar, you shouldn't be trading. Okay, this is extremely important for all the reasons I just mentioned. So make sure you know, guys. Well, I'll just mention, like, if I know it's a bit difficult in Australia because most of these volatile news events occur while we're asleep or should be sleeping. So you still got to be safe though. But like if you can't be awake when that news event's on, turn your software off, and either don't trade that night at all, or turn it on after the news event. If you're not sleeping, if you're sleeping and you can't afford to miss your sleep, just don't trade that night. Particularly if we're talking about CPI or NFP, either be awake for them and start trading again after, or don't trade the whole night. Typically, most of those volatile news events occur before midnight my time. So, NFP, CPI, all of those are always before midnight, usually 10:30 or 11:30 at night. So I'm happy. I generally leave my, when we're talking about software trading, I'll leave my software on until just prior to that news event. If I don't have any trades open, I'll just turn off auto trading, and after the news event, maybe whatever, 10, 15 minutes after the news event, I'm happy to turn it back on. That's using MMT. Other softwares, you may want to wait longer, just depending on how they operate. But if just prior to the news event I have trades opened already, I'll make a judgment on when to close them. But I will close them. I don't care if I have trades that are in a decent amount of drawdown. I will close them at a loss before CPI, before NFP, etc. And I have learnt that lesson the hard way. One time I believe it was the CPI event, I had a trade that was in decent profit. I was in about 1% floating profit. I knew the news event was coming, but I hadn't learnt my lesson yet. I took precautions, so what I thought were precautions. I moved my stop loss below my entry point, essentially making it a no-risk trade. But because of the gapping and particularly because of the slippage with that CPI event, I took about a 15% loss on my account. Okay, so hopefully you can just take my advice on that and you don't have to learn the hard way like I did. Anyway, guys, that's how you should be using your economic calendar. I'll talk to you later.